I think we can get started this morning then. So my name's Tom Fillis, and I work in the European Commission's Directorate General for Informatics in the CEF Stakeholder Management Office. Basically, our office deals with the promotion of the Connecting Europe Facility financed building blocks, and I'll go into that a bit more. But first, we will quickly have a look at the ground rules for this webinar. So as I've said, please click on Connect Audio to hear, but mute your microphone, and we will mute you as we're going along, and this is to stop excessive background noise. You can submit your questions in the chat function. You can submit that to the account Kelly Lilyemo, or you can submit it in the open group chat, because we will endeavor to address all questions. We will endeavor to answer all questions throughout the webinar, and we will also publish written answers to all the questions subsequently. And if we aren't able in the time available to get through all of the questions, then you can check the written ones that we publish. But I see that we will have around 20 minutes for Q&A, so it should be fine. Finally, please note that this webinar is being recorded, and we will publish the recording of this webinar on what is now the registration page, which we will update subsequently with all the presentations and the recording. Questions can be asked via the chat, as I've said, but we use the hashtag Connecting Europe if you're keen to promote the messages that we're discussing today via social media. Okay, so without any further ado, we can get started. So here we have today's agenda. So I said I'm Tom, and I'm just going to very briefly give an overview of the program that we're discussing today, the CEF program, and specifically the CEF building blocks, of which e-archiving is one. We then have Jamie Kaminski, who is going to go through the trainings that are currently being offered around the e-archiving building block. And then we have the introduction to the CSIP by Karin Bredenberg. And then, as I said, we have approximately 20 minutes for Q&A. So assuming everything seems quite clear at the get-go, so basically a quick overview for those of you who are joining and may not be familiar with the CEF program or the CEF building blocks more comprehensively. So the Connecting Europe Facility, or CEF, is a financing program. It's the EU's largest financing instrument for cross-border connectivity. It's actually a infrastructure program. So it finances infrastructure in the areas of transport, energy, and telecom. And within telecom, the largest amount is earmarked for the Connecting Europe Facility building blocks, which I'll explain in a moment. Just to explain a little bit how it's governed, there is a regulation which sort of creates CEF and defines the areas of support that the European Union can engage in. For CEF Telecom, there are then the CEF Telecom guidelines, and these cover the general and strategic objectives of the program. These are principles such as supporting mature IT solutions and solutions that are designed or able to be used in a cross-border context, etc. And then finally, we have our annual work programs, which are published on the Commission's website, which define the work which will go on in a specific year. And this is how the program is structured. The CEF program runs 2014 to 2020, so we're now at the end of the current program, and discussions are now underway as we move forward to the Digital Europe program, which is the EU's largest ever financing program for digital connectivity. So I've mentioned the CEF building blocks. These are reusable modular solutions which are designed to enable key attributes in digital services. What does that mean? It's about, for example, EID allows citizens to connect to public services using their national electronic ID in another member state. So a Belgian person living in Germany can register at their local town hall or register to a course at university, etc. The e-delivery building block, for example, supports secure cross-border data exchange. So it does this by promoting the AS4 standard message exchange protocol. The building blocks themselves basically promote standards. So at the core of any one building block, you have a constituent standard or range of standards and specifications. These are often defined in EU legislation, and the building blocks basically support the implementation of these standards by providing, first of all, the standards and then offering a range of supporting services. And I'll outline that in a moment. Of the collection of building blocks that you see here, the EID, e-delivery, and e-signature building blocks all support the implementation on the eIDAS regulation. That's the regulation on authentication and trust services in the internal market. E-invoicing supports the implementation of the European standard on e-invoicing, as mandated through the directive on e-invoicing and public procurement. The context broker, big data test infrastructure, and e-archiving are all seen as basically components of the data value chain. So how do you use data sets? How do you deploy them in services and smart services? And finally, how do you engage in long-term data storage? And finally, we have e-translation, which offers a multilingual, the ability to have multilingual cross-border public services by basically using an API. So we're going to focus today specifically on e-archiving and some specific components of e-archiving, but we just wanted to explain a little bit what the program is, what the CEF program is, and note that e-archiving is one building block among several. And if you're interested in any of the other building blocks, then we can provide information on those. And on the CEF digital website, which is home to all the information on CEF e-archiving, you will also find all the information you need on the other CEF building blocks. So what does a building block contain? So you have the sample, you can have sample software containing the standards. You then can have access to training sessions, and we'll be discussing some of those in the e-archiving context today. And conformance testing services, basically to ensure that the standards contained within the building block have been correctly applied, and these services are free. And how do you use a building block? Well, you can either take the core constituent standards and build a software solution. You can buy compliant solutions from the market, or you can reuse sample software provided by the Commission. And this all changes slightly depending on which building block is under discussion, but this is the broad way in which you implement one. So there are just a few opening words on the program. I think we'll take all the questions at the end. I think that probably is easier, and I'll be happy to answer any questions on the wider catalogue of building blocks. I'll hand over now to Jamie. So how we're going to do it today is that I will move us through the slides. So Jamie will just tell me when he wants to move to the next slide. And the reason we're doing it like this, it's obviously not very seamless, but this allows us to record the webinar. And if we change presenters, then we lose the ability to record the webinar. So Jamie, please.